Andy, as I was walking back from the gym this morning, as I do on my mornings,
I can tell. Yeah, you look particularly swole today. Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean it's getting there. I got a lot of work ahead of me. I got to lose some weight. I packed on some weight because you lifting, you gain the weight, some of it, but I also need to get rid of the bad weight.
You were in your
So
bulking phase, Dave. It's okay. You're in your bulking cycle. Now you're in your now
yeah,
you're in your shredding cycle. It's okay. Good approach.
yeah, it's a fair approach. I aspire to be you one day, Andy. But that aside, as I was walking back, I couldn't help but notice every couple houses there'd be a rolled up newspaper on the sidewalk, and I couldn't help but think, like, did you enjoy reading the newspaper in the morning, like,
I
or
did.
did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, what
I
was
did.
your favorite part?
I mean, I was pretty young, so sports was definitely sort of my go-to. I'd look at the front page, hit sports, and then just sort of scan, other sections as time would allow before my black fingers had to be washed so I could get on the bus.
Yeah, I love looking. I did too, and I love looking at the box scores and stuff, and seeing like
Yeah.
what happened, and it seemed like a very simple time and such, and I really enjoyed it. And I think I mentioned before, I was a newspaper carrier. That was my first job, and so like we delivered a lot of newspapers
Yeah.
in our area. Now you see it once every 5, 10 houses or whatever, very rarely around. But I do kind of wonder, like, should I get the newspaper again, or would it matter? I mean, the journalism, like, I don't know if you've noticed, but media companies are cutting back like crazy, like
Yeah.
CNN, Sports Illustrated. They had the big thing with them a couple weeks back. Los Angeles Times, all these places are cutting back. I think just people aren't reading the newspaper anymore. That's where you generated a lot of your ads. Now the ad places go other places.
Yeah, and I mean, and online reading, I think, has just increased so much. I mean, I do still read the news, but I mean, a lot. I mean, for work reasons, I read the news a lot. But I do sometimes just sit and read certain publications, but I read them in an app, as opposed
Yeah.
to with a hard copy paper. I mean, I mean, like newspapers themselves kind of stink, right? I mean, it is messy, right? The print is messy, but back in the day when we were kids, it was just like that is how you got the recap of what happened the day before, because otherwise you wouldn't know, right? I mean, you wouldn't know who won what game without being able to check the paper. And so what would you talk about on the bus if you didn't check it before you left?
And as much as I love going through the sports scores and everything, they were always like the cutoff time was 10 p.m. or something
Yeah,
so they could
yeah,
get it printed out. And so
yeah,
you never knew the finals, or you'd get that box that says this score was after publication or something, and you'd be struggling to find out, did your team win the night before or whatever. So always fun time, but it's good stuff, good reminiscing there, Andy. Okay, but we got other things to get into, Andy. I think a couple fun sports news stories for you though, Andy. Your man is staying.
Unexpected news. A gift to Lions fans everywhere yesterday is Ben Johnson notified the Seattle Seahawks and the Washington Commanders that he was staying in Detroit as the offensive coordinator. Dave, he has been an incredibly good coach and was foolish. People thought he was going to leave last year, and he said, "No, I'm not going to go." Good for him, not going to the Panthers, which is sort of the expected spot. He's from Carolina, and then it fully expected him to leave this year. I mean, that was like just like maybe Aaron Glenn would be gone, certainly Ben Johnson would be gone, and he's staying. And so he didn't really explain it in detail why. I've got some thoughts around it, but what a huge, huge win for Lions fans. I mean, I sincerely believe one, he's got time, right? He's got time. He's going to be a hot commodity for a long time. He's 37 years old, so he can take a head coaching job when he wants. And he probably wants to get a little bit more seasoned before taking that role on. All the temptation of money, I'm sure, is there. But I really think he and Dan Campbell and some of those players, I think they're looking at this as unfinished business, Dave. I think they see a chance for Detroit to win the Super Bowl. You made that 1990s Cowboys comparison last week, and I went back and looked at that yesterday. I was like, Dave really made an interesting observation here. I think they see the Lions being able to win the Super Bowl next year, and that's without disrupting the team. I think Ben Johnson wants to be part of that before he goes to try and build his own squad. And so knowing that he's going to come back with Jared Goff, with that young team, I mean, honestly, it was very good, surprising news yesterday. So a huge win.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's better than any free agent pickup, to be
Oh
honest.
yeah,
Look, they have a good team. They can probably strengthen their defense just a little bit, but from an offensive standpoint of it, is Jared Goff is the X factor. They're gonna pay him. I don't know how much they're gonna pay him, but he's gonna get a lot of money, and they're gonna be committed to his contract now. And there's no secret that he did better with Johnson than he did anywhere else. And he's really matured and developed into a really good quarterback. And let's just be real. Goff didn't cost the Lions that game the other day. A couple bad drops and a fumble. Really bad plays there. But Goff put the throws right on the numbers, and unfortunately, the guys dropped it.
Well,
But that
he's in a
said,
contract next year and at a very cheap price for a starting quarterback. So the Lions are good there.
yeah, I think yeah, he's got one more year left, but everyone thinks he's going to get extended, right? I think
Yeah,
that's like
yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
so you're going to pay him, and then you now have this coordinator who everyone loves. And look, I have to just tell you, if I'm a really hot coordinator, like Seattle, what's going to entice you about going to Seattle? And then what's going to entice you about going to the Commanders? I mean, the Commanders are going to have obviously the second pick, so they're going to pick a quarterback, but at the same time, is the rest of that roster is a disaster. Why not ride it out one more year with the Lions and try to win that Super Bowl? I think they would be. I mean, San Francisco is probably going to be number one. The Eagles, I don't know what the outlook on them is going to be, but they did, looking at didn't they pick up Kellen Moore as
They
their
did, yeah, they did, and
yeah
I think that's part of Ben John's calculation is stick around for the year and potentially right jobs in Philly could open up, jobs in Dallas could open up. There's some really good positions that could open up for him. It might be really tempting. So yeah, there's definitely an
yeah.
opportunity in the horizon.
Well, it's exciting news for you, Andy. I think that's really good for Detroit, and it's
Yeah,
exciting to see that city continue to rally around the Lions because the rest of their sports are not necessarily that great. So, all right, Andy, good news for you. Good news for me as
yeah.
well, Andy. So, news broke late yesterday. In fact, my brother tweeted me about it or sent it to me. The Baltimore Orioles are selling the team. The owner of the Orioles is selling the team to a pair of hedge fund people from Baltimore. This is amazing news because the Orioles owners, while they start, Peter Angelos was the owner initially, and he obviously stays in the Angelos name, but it went to John, and John like Peter was bad because he ran into confrontations, ran off one of our best managers, Davey Johnson, after they were one win away from the World Series, and they had great runs in '96 and '97. That from '97 on, '98 they went in the tank for effectively 20 years. They refused to pay free agents. They refused to pay anybody, despite the fact that they were selling out Camden Yards all the time, despite the fact they were winning. They went bottom of the barrel in just about every way. I think it was 15 or 17 straight losing seasons before Buck Showalter came in. They made some good trades and draft pieces, built a great nucleus of young talent, didn't pay, they skipped paying all but one of them, Chris Davis, who they gave a monumental contract, and as soon as he signed it, he went in the tank. So they're saddled with that for 7 years. They still never paid until they finally drafted or brought in the current coach, Brandon Hyde and Mike Elias, the GM. They started developing young talent. They're a great team now. But this owner, and now as John Angelos is the owner, primarily lead the face of the team, kept like talking about how they weren't going to pay the young players. They have the Orioles have the top farm system for 3 years in a row. They have the top pick for 3 years, like the number one prospect in America for 3 years in a row. And yet they're talking already about not being able to play these players. The city of Baltimore is frustrated. They had walkouts, they had staged all sorts of things to get rid of this ownership group, and it's finally happened. It's an amazing feeling, Andy. I just don't know where to start.
I'm excited for you, Dave. I mean, it sounds like something that Orioles fans have long hoped for and are finally getting. And it's an exciting time. I mean, it's interesting to see this happening in Washington D.C. metro area sports, right? I mean, you've got the Commanders sale, you've got now the Orioles being sold. I don't think I would cry if something radical happened with the Washington Wizards.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see it play out. But Dave, something that was interesting. I mean, I saw the price tag that was being discussed here for the Orioles, right? $1.725 billion. Like, man, that seems like a lot of money, for a baseball team. And I just kind of looked up the most valuable sports franchise. Have you ever looked up to see how
Yeah.
much some of the, I mean, your Dallas Cowboys sit on top of world sports teams at $9 billion. I mean,
Yep.
amazing, right? And you can listen. There's a lot of NFL teams on there, not all of which are good. I mean, the Jets
Look at
are on
the
there, the Giants are on there, and I get they're New York City, right? They're big markets, but I mean the price tags. I mean, the Orioles, I mean, they seem like at under $2 billion. It seems like a steal. It's pretty amazing.
Well, look at what the Commanders just sell for. I mean,
Yeah,
it was somewhere in that $4 or $5 billion
yeah,
neighborhood, and they suck, And that was a terrible franchise. I think and some of these people owners had bought their teams when they were in the hundreds of millions, like even
yeah,
like 200, 300 million. I think Michael Jordan, who was the primary owner for the Charlotte Hornets, he bought the Hornets or was part of the Hornets when it was, I think he paid 250 or 300,000, 300 million for the team.
yeah.
And he's walking away, and they were in the 2 billion neighborhood. Um, and they were awful, Andy. Like the Charlotte teams have been awful for basketball, and it's like no matter what, your value is going to go up, and it just seems
Yeah.
out of whack
It's
because of all
wild.
the TV deals, the merchandising deals. It's not about the product you put on the field anymore. I mean,
It's
it's
the brand. It's the brand. Yeah, I mean, the Commanders sold for 6.05 billion. They're
yeah,
currently ranked as the 12th most valuable franchise, three spots above the Lakers, which I was, I mean, the Lakers are a global brand, right? Everybody
yeah.
knows, whether you know Magic Johnson or you know Shaquille O'Neal or you know Kevin Durant. Like, I mean, everybody knows, or I'm sorry, LeBron James. I mean, everybody knows the Lakers brand. It's amazing how valuable these clubs are. But congratulations to you, to the city of Baltimore. May it be a tide turning ownership change for you all, and get you back in contention.
Yeah, so a little sports talk on a Wednesday, Andy, to kind of get us through to the Super Bowl next week. This is the dead period or whatever. So, Andy, another story we want to talk about here. There was a report this week that IBM is now sending notes out to their employees. Hey, you're in the office or you're out. It's 3 days a week. There's a hybrid approach. You're in the office, you're out. And this is just the latest in a series of companies that have done this. Obviously, a couple of years back, we had some of the big tech companies giving the same ultimatums to people. A lot of the banks are doing very similar things right now. We've seen a lot of that news. I think Bank of America was pushing some of that stuff out. But a lot of these companies now are saying, "Hey, look, we're paying a lot of money for these buildings. We want you in the office. We feel we're more productive in the office together, 3 days a week and two out, or like that hybrid approach. And if you're not willing to do that, then there's a door you can leave. And it's pretty hardcore on that. I'm kind of I don't know what the issue here is, Andy, honestly.
Yeah,
Like a high when before the pandemic, we were doing this at the place that I worked at. You could work 4 days, or depending on your seniority, you could work 3 days or 4 days in the office, and then you had a day off. I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I get a day I can wear around sweatpants and all this other stuff and do my work.
yeah.
It was great. I loved it. Obviously, the pandemic changed all of that. And I think a lot of companies overhired during that period because they think they needed more people to do things that they would normally do in the office. And then when the pandemic's over, they struggled to get back in the office, and people felt entitled to be able to stay home. Where do you fall on all this part, Andy? The work from home and getting into the office.
I mean, it's a challenging topic, and I think it really varies from organization to organization and the business itself, on how viable telework versus working in the office really is. I mean, when the idea of remote work first started, I struggled to embrace the idea, right? I had a big team that I was leading, and we started letting people stay home based on capacity. There wasn't enough room for them to all be in the office. And, the first time early on when I called one of my teammates and didn't get a response, and then I got a call back, and the response was, hey, I'm at the grocery store. I nearly lost my mind, right? I was like, this is not going to work. fast forward years later, today my team is completely, virtually based, and it works great. For the type of work that we do and the team that we are, there's no need to be in an office setting. But that doesn't apply to everybody, right? It doesn't apply to everybody. There's a lot of value in being able to get together and have collaboration. I think most companies have tried to find the balance, right? Most companies are not saying, hey, you've got to be here every day. But back to your example, it's 2, 3, maybe 4 days in the office, 1, 2, 3 days out of the office, and even with that, there tends to be some flexibility that folks can stay home and work home if the situation demands or something comes up, and that seems like a reasonable balance. The pandemic really did change things. Some folks started work or started most of their professional career in that environment and sort of got very used to it, and there's some benefits for that, right? Besides the convenience of working in a comfortable setting. But for some people, that changed how they looked at daycare services or other things that may have been expenses to them. And commutes generally suck, and depending on where you are in the U.S., your commute can be better or worse. And nobody wants to waste time, driving to and from the office. I mean, I used to spend literally, 4 hours a day doing that at one point in my life. And so I get the frustration, but at the same time, like, if you're told, like, if your business decides to come back to the office, right? You said there's these big office buildings that are being paid for, and they want to use them, or for whatever other reason, like, suck it up, buttercup, get back in the office if that's what's required of you, right? I mean, it's a challenge there. It's a challenge because, the economy is doing well, right? The economy is growing. Yeah, we're still seeing layoffs in certain sectors and communities at pretty significant numbers in certain areas. And so it's kind of a weird balance for both the employee and the companies to decide, do I stay or do I go with these pressures and demands? And I think it really comes down to the individual making that choice what's best for them. It's a challenging process to think through, and enforcement is hard. And I think we both make the best decision for them and their lifestyle.
Yeah, I do think this is definitely an interesting time. It's kind of like a lot of employees do have a lot of options to look at. There is a lot of variations in work styles and variations in what is being offered. Look, IBM's being very transparent here, and I think a lot of companies have been very transparent too. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the policy. Look, if you don't like it, you can leave.
Yeah.
We're going to enforce this though. In fact, they're analyzing badge records. So you badge into a building, they can say, "Hey, Andy's here for today," and they'll badge out. Some people might take offense to that, but I don't know any other way for you to really. I mean, like, I think the challenge with so many of these things is, like, if I look at my team at work, yeah, we're not all in the same location as much as I'd like us to be there. So I don't know when I used to have one when I was in the army. I used to have my deputy director would look at, he would always be the office right near the door, and he'd
Yeah.
have the clock right above the door, and he'd always be counting when so and so went there. He's like, up, it's not quite 4:30 yet, it's quite, that kind of thing. We don't have something like that here now in our environment. I have people all over the country, and I don't know when they're badging in or badging out. So you have to use badge records of some sort. So I don't have an objection to that. But look, if you don't like it, then you can leave. I mean, find a place that does offer remote work. What I will tell you is I just don't think those are long-term roles. I don't think those are long-term options anymore. And I know it offers a lot of flexibility for a certain workforce, and based on your various conditions. But I just, like, look, I mean, companies said what they're going to do. So I don't know. I think this gets made out of a lot, and I'm not sure it's really that consequential.
I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, look, you're talking to a guy that spends most of his workday in 3-inch long running shorts, right? So that is not professional office attire, right? So I think it's comforts and things we've gotten used to that people have to decide. What do they want to live with and what do they want to live without? There's nothing wrong with companies demanding whatever they want to demand in a reasonable manner, right? So come to the office at a certain time, work certain core hours. I think they are trying to give some flexibility, right? And I think that's the right answer. Like, you want to respect employees, current situations and realities of modern times and the ability to work remotely. I think each company has to find their own balance. Again, I think it's different from industry to industry, company to company, culture to culture. There's a lot of things that go into it, but it's a balance. It's always going to be a balance between the organization and the individual. And we're in a transition period in that sense. Like, there's going to be a 5-10 year still, I think, transition as we sort of settle into the opportunities for remote work and the necessity of office work. We're all still trying to figure it out in this post COVID era.
Yep, the post-COVID era. Okay, Andy, anything else on that? Any other comments here?
I'm ready to rock and roll to the next topic.
All right, love it when you hit me with the music. Andy, another news story came out this week about Elon Musk's Neuralink, which is putting an implant in the human brain. Very interesting technology, very interested scientific development, but they have a plan to let humans wirelessly connect their brains with phones and other devices and so on. Obviously, a lot of things come out with this and like, oh, great, this is crazy news. It's the focus right now is on people who have maybe not have the ability to, move their limbs or move their arms and various parts of their body, may have some debilitating diseases. But this is an opportunity for, maybe to connect wirelessly with your devices through your brain and be able to help facilitate some of those things that might make those lives easier. Obviously, that might be the positive, obvious stories out of it. There's always the science fiction part. Are we moving more towards cyborgs and other types of developments? For every good thing that comes out of technology, somebody's looking to exploit it for their purposes, whether good or bad. And so when you saw this story, Andy, what do you think on that?
Yes, I had a lot of thoughts, right? So some folks might recall the story back in 2021 when Neuralink first tested this out on a monkey, playing Pong, right? And it was kind of a big deal. The monkey was able to play Pong a little bit, move the paddle. Look, there's a lot of things going into this. One, I think it's funny how Elon Musk has gone from hero to villain over the last 5 years or so for many people. So things are introduced like they are in one article here from NPR. Elon Musk's Neuralink, everything's sort of like, hey, remember this is Elon Musk's, right? Which sort of
Yeah.
immediately biases people to like him or hate him, which I think is interesting in and of itself. But one technology is amazing and it's making the world a better place every day, right? So the idea that there could be an option to help those that are struggling with whatever physical or mental ailment, right? So quadriplegics are a great example. If there's the ability to potentially allow individuals that aren't able to do things that many of us take for granted every day, the ability to communicate, move, manipulate, solid objects, virtual objects, whatever it is, like that's incredible, right? The idea that that technology could exist, I think, is incredible and should be celebrated. And it'd be amazing if help and support for those individuals can come along. And I would seriously consider it if I had a serious challenge, physically or mentally, that this could help with, right? So I think the potential of something like this is great. The fact that Neuralink, some questionable concerns about some of the testing and things like that. I think there should be a little bit more transparency in that. I think, there's some questions and concerns I have there. But listen, I've got to be honest with you, Dave. I don't care if it's Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or whatever big brain, successful business person it is out there, right? I'm not putting a device in my brain, regardless of who creates it, unless I absolutely need to, right? The the risk to reward factor there, right? I don't care what it does. I can say, at this point in my life, right, this might be, I think, very different for younger folks than older folks. Like, there is no way in my lifetime that I will put something in my brain that can leak, be corrupted, be potentially accessed remotely. Like, that's not going in my skull or probably anywhere in my body, right? Unless I fell into a situation where I was limited in some significant way and needed this to conduct basic functions. I don't know, Dave. Elon Musk or whoever, are you putting a device in your brain? Are you allowing access and are you doing that?
Yeah, well, Andy, everything as soon as it comes out, it has vulnerability. So to your
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
as soon as you put that connect that, knowing that you could potentially hack it to, and look, let's just be, I think transparent on my side is, um, while this may start off for medical purposes,
Oh yeah.
people are going to use it it's going to transition to how do we make this recreationally? How can you do this on other things? How can you how can you do games through this Neuralink connection type of thing? So it's not going to just be a medical benefit. There's always going to be some way to make it marketable and in our capitalist society, there's going to how do I make as much money off of this as I can? And so there's no way on earth I'd ever do that because I just know inherently everything is vulnerable. Unless there was some sort of medical condition that would make things better. or easier, I would still have very strong challenge opposition to that. And just I really want to know what was happening. And frankly, I just don't know if I have that level of trust. So it would take a hard sell for me, Andy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, as dumb as certain things look, right? I mean, if you're walking around with a Meta device or an Apple device on your face, right? You're trying to see the
Yeah,
world. Like, I think uh, sort of augmented reality, I think is really cool, right? The idea behind that, being able to bring things to vision, that are not real in the real world or enhance things in the real world. I think there's a lot of really incredible potentiality in that. And I think that technology can evolve, right? But that's external at the end of the day, and I think that's got its own challenges and concerns, but I think that's fine in the way to go. I mean, there's just so many questions and concerns about having something implanted in your body, let alone in your skull. I
yeah.
I, I don't think I could get. And you're right. I mean, the commercialization would be inevitable, and I get the temptation of it, but the risk reward is just not there for me. I think this will continue to be closely monitored by governments around the world, and I'm pretty sure there'll be some pretty close regulations on things like this as it continues to evolve, as there probably needs to be. But it's exciting. It's exciting, and again, for those with needs, I think it can be incredible, right? And so I'm glad that there's investment into such technology, but for the average, relatively healthy individual, it's a big leap to allow anyone to put a device in your skull and have access to your sweet, beautiful little brain. So
Yeah.
not for me, Dave. Not for me. I'll pass, and I'm pretty confident I'll hold that position until I'm no longer in this world.
Yeah, there we go. And with that, Andy, I think that's probably a good run through some of those interesting headlines for this Wednesday. And we haven't talked politics in a while, Andy. We may have to come back and revisit some of those in the coming episodes here. But anything else from your side, Andy? Anything you've seen these last couple of days that you want to bring out?
No, Dave. Again, for Lions fans everywhere, happy Ben Johnson staying with the Lions Day, and I think it's a great place to wrap up. Dave, the month of January will be behind us here, so we're preparing to usher in the great month of February with wonderful celebrations like Valentine's Day and one of my favorites, Dave. You know it, the George Washington birthday celebration. So we look forward to all these things ahead.
I cannot wait until we get into the George Washington birthday discussion, Andy. We'll have to do that as we get in and make sure everyone is well known where you fall on this. So, Andy, that's going to be a pod. Oh, it's going to be a great pod. So, all right, Andy, with that, I will catch you next time.